Hi, I'm Jim Clark, Visual Arts Manager here at Hopkins Center for the Arts. Today we're speaking with Sanjukta Mitra about her exhibition, Spirit of Myth. Sanjukta, welcome.
Thank you so much. Just grateful to be here, and very happy.
Awesome, awesome. You have a number of paintings on display from multiple series of works. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about each series and how you approach a series in general? I'm bombarding you with questions right off the bat, but another thing that I'm curious about is if you work on multiple series at one time, or if it's that you work on one and then you move on.
Sure. Yeah, so I think all my paintings that are here, and even the ones that are still, kind of drying on my easel right now in my studio, they're all spiritually driven. And if I had to talk about my journey, the reason I started painting was because I wanted to just touch people in some way or the other, right? That's how I started painting. I started painting just about 4 years back. All my life I have been painting, but one of those paintings that you paint and you just put it away thinking it's no good, nobody needs to see it. But it was truly 4 years back that I decided that I'm going to paint full time for the rest of my life. And the reason I decided that was because I painted something that really touched me and my family, and it made a difference. It somewhere transformed me as a person. I felt like that was the purpose of my life, like being able to touch people in some way or the other and make the hairline difference perhaps, and just make them feel better inside. So with that, genesis in mind, all my series here are either talking about universal connectedness, like how you and I and all of us here are connected through our inner self, or it's about the inner journey that we can take within, explore ourselves. And of course, by doing that, you also find how deeply you're again connected with everybody else. And the final one was kind of dedicated towards the spirit animals that we coexist with, right? And to be able to do that, I'm again very inspired by the Greek, mythological figures and warriors and angels. But I also wanted to make a juxtaposition. I wanted to create a juxtaposition between my spirit animals and the Greek mythological figures and bring the essence of what, these, again, like for example, that one there, Achilles and the horse. I'm trying to bring the spirit of Achilles through the essence of the horse. So all my series practically revolve around showing us how we can be hopeful in life, how we can sort of derive strength and be positive and be loving, and in general just be kind humans.
Sure.
Right? So that's the idea. So there are right now I have three series in the studio here. The first one is about connectedness, and that's the one you will see in those red warm tones. It's all about how all of us are connected through the larger force, right? And for example, that painting out there, it's called the Infinite Me. And if you see those three children there, they're holding the hands of a larger force. In this case, I was thinking of Buddha in my mind. So they're all holding the hands of Buddha, and that's how they're all connected with each other, right? Somewhere through their soul. So that was my first series where I'm trying to show how we are all connected through an external source. The second series was all about the inner journey and awakening, the one where the girl is smiling with all the birds around, right? That awakening is really an inner awakening, right? She has her eyes closed, but the view that you see of the birds flying and hovering around her is the view of her inner self. That's what she wants to wake up to. That's the freedom that she feels inside. And so when I was painting that, I wanted to paint something that when I wake up in the morning, what is that I want to see? I want to see that freedom, of self. So those are the paintings of my second series, which is all about the inner journey. And the third one are the blues and the oranges. So my color palette is also kind of changing, as you can see. So it's again, it comes back to the juxtaposition of spirit animals and Greek figures that we all know of, familiar, popular figures. And at the same time, the act of balancing in our life. So that's why you see a lot of cool colors and a lot of warmth, and how they're trying to balance each other. So when you look at these paintings, you see a lot of these blues, different shades of all my cool temperature colors, but at the same time you also see the oranges and the reds, and the kind of counteracting, you know, with the blues.
Sure.
And to your question of whether I work on these series simultaneously, I pick up one series at a time, but I work on a lot of different canvases with the concepts of that one series. So it's one series at a time, but multiple paintings from that series.
When you start a new series, have you found that you ever go back to revisit a previous series, or once you kind of put a pin in it, you've worked out everything that you intended to work out, and you're on to the next thing fully?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a mixed bag. There are times when I look back at my previous series and I'm like, this is no good. I should have done something differently. But I resist not to touch it, with the exception of one painting which is right at the entrance. That painting I started that painting in 2021. I typically like to start and finish within a couple of weeks, whichever painting that I'm working on, 40 to 60 hours. But that painting I started in 2021 summers. I got to a point and I wasn't happy. I actually had a portrait there against the deers in the background, but I wasn't happy with it. I knew there was something wrong with that painting. So I just shelved it, and I looked at it day in, day out, every day, right there in my studio. And it was just a couple of weeks back in December, right? November, this year, that I went back to it, and I said to myself that instead of having a plan, I guess what was not working for me on that particular canvas was that I was overly wired into what my plan was, my initial concept. So I just changed my approach. I was like, I'm gonna just look at this canvas and ask myself, what is that I would like to see? Like, what is that, when I say I, like in general, what is the message I wanna give? And so I just let the canvas guide me, and I came up with David's sculpture there on that painting, and it made sense to me because, again, it's the god of beauty, god of sun, and the deers and poems and the poetic flair in him. All of that kind of started making sense to me.
Sure.
So that's how typically it goes.
As I look at the work and listening to your description of your process as well, each series is identified by a color palette. And how do you arrive at the palette that you're going to use for a given work, number one, and then number two, how do you know that it's going to be that palette that drives this whole series? I mean, from my standpoint, I would find it incredibly challenging to stick to a set palette for an entire group of work. Is that something that you find restrictive at all? I mean, it seems like not, and actually maybe it allows you to focus on the subject matter more. That was quite a lot, but so how do you identify the color scheme?
I think it's instinct driven, and this absolute madness with, madly in love with the colors that I truly use.
Sure.
You will see that not just on my canvas, but also in my wardrobe, also in the little artifacts that I buy for my home, in my curtains, everywhere. And I realize that now that I'm an artist, and I'm kind of, in retrospect, I realize that I was the same. I was in love with my blues and oranges even 10 years back when I was not even an artist. I was a data science consultant, a sedentary job, sitting there and just working on my laptop. So I guess those colors are just in me, they speak to me. And I want to just continuously try creating different variations of that color. So if you just look at this, yes, there are these cool colors that you see, but if you come close, there are probably 100 shades of blues and greens that I've used. So I am constantly in this research mode and just trying to play around with colors. And I guess what I'm always ending up with is something that is true to my soul. So if I end up creating something that I don't like, I probably keep working on it until I get to my blues. You know what I mean? And to that point, there was a time when I was looking for a formula. And I guess I found that formula, but I realized that the day I got that formula, it bored me. I didn't want to go back. So I realized that I shouldn't be looking for a formula. I should always be this researcher, in spirit, and just be a student. And every time I approach a canvas, I need to have this fresh mindset of, again, trying to find something new. So I realized that the repetition is probably in using the same tubes, but when I'm mixing my colors, I'm always looking for something new. And I feel the colors come to me also at the same time, because I'm constantly seeking, I'm constantly asking myself, what would look good? So I don't think the answers are in me, the answers are all around, because I'm constantly asking and seeking. Suddenly, flash, oh, orange, blue, red, and whatever.
Yeah.
So I guess I leave my canvas at a point where I feel good with, whether it conforms to the standard norms of using the right amount of a dominant color or not, I don't know. I just leave it at a point that suits my, my intentions.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Tell us a bit more about that journey from non-artist to artist. Had you trained or studied in art early on, or somewhat continuously through the period that, and I believe you identified it as not being an artist, a data researcher. Were you kind of daydreaming visually, and things were tugging at you? What was the awakening that you spoke about doing a painting and that it touched people, and you knew at that point you had to do it, but at some point you had to get to the point where you'd even make a painting. So were you painting a little bit off and on, or tell us about that?
Yeah. I mean, so I was born and raised in India, and fairly enough, the mindset is that if you're not academically oriented, you're not going to have a good quality of living. So we got to study, and we got to study really hard, and take all kinds of competitive exams. And when I say competitive exams, it truly means that you're studying 16 hours a day, and getting a good rank and landing with a great job, which promises a good standard of living. So that's the kind of background I came from. And I was totally okay with it. It wasn't that I was just trying to break free and just be an artist. The idea of being an artist, I think, was just such a subconscious thing. My family is very creative in general. I have been into classical form of dancing and even music, vocal music.
Sure.
In fact, that was my first love. I wanted to be a playback singer before I wanted to be a visual artist. But so I did that all my life. I have a background in mathematics, and I did my master's in business administration, landed a job, worked for about 15 years. Every now and then over a weekend would just pick up a subject and would just paint and would keep it away. Really never made a big deal out of it. I just wanted to express myself. I would do it and I would just put it away. But in my heart, I just knew that someday when I retire, I'm going to retire into painting. That's or doing something which is artsy. It could be singing, dancing, wherever, like some form of art, and just dedicate the rest of my life after I retire. But what happened was, they say, right, you have to be a child or a fool at heart to sometimes make those brave decisions. So 3 years back when COVID hit us, 2020, beginning, I decided I'm going to just take a short sabbatical from work and just be home for my kids and my husband, and just take life a little easy for a couple of weeks. That was the idea. And then COVID hit us, and we didn't know back then how long it was going to go for, right? So I just took a back seat. I'm like, okay, when you're creative, you wanna use your energy. It has to come out. You just can't sit and just watch TV. It's not going to work. So I just picked up a canvas and I started painting. And oh my God, that feeling. I remind myself every day when I don't get the motivation to paint, that why did I start painting? So that feeling was like, what am I waiting for? This is truly me. This is my purpose of life. This is what I was born for. So I remember I was scared to even voice that thought that I'm going to leave my corporate job and I want to just paint for the rest of my life, given we just bought a house and we have 2 daughters. But So I was on this journey of figuring out, is this just a fling? Is this just a couple of projects that I'll paint and decorate my house with and it'll be over? Or is this truly something that I can sustain for the rest of my life? And I remember one day, I lost my dad in 2018, December. And I remember one day, this is during the COVID phase, that I was just sitting with my daughter. And I looked at her broken crayons, none of those sophisticated crayons. These are just, those regular Crayola, those 50 cents crayons. And I had this sense, this really compulsive urge, if you will, to sketch my dad's portrait. So I sat there with my daughter right in front of me doing some, math problem, and I started sketching my dad. And I actually sketched it on a piece of paper that she had used for writing her alphabets. That is how casual it was. But when I sketched for 2 hours. I didn't even erase it even once. When I was done with the portrait, I remember that piece of art to me was not art at all. I couldn't see my strokes. I couldn't see the colors I had used. I couldn't see the medium. I just saw my dad. And I just saw, oh my God, all my life I looked at art as just something that can be used for decorating the house. No, art can transform life. I mean, that day I felt he was in me. So I'm not going to look for him anywhere else, because I'm just, my body cells, whatever it is, he's in me. He's working through me. And that transformed me. That changed my approach in life. That void that I was feeling all throughout, it was strangely, it was just, it just felt right. It felt meaningful. His demise felt like it was fine. And my mom felt the same when I showed that painting to her. So that's when, these are my moments of realization that art is not just something that you paint and you feel good about. If you are painting from your soul, it's going to touch somebody else, and it's going to make a difference to that person, somebody who's seeking, who's looking for it. That was a sign. And that's it. At that moment, I was like, okay, if I'm going to paint, I'm going to paint to spread the positivity that I felt in my heart. And my brother, my husband, they supported me. They were like, okay, let's just go with it. We'll see what happens. Give it a year. And that's how the journey began. So there's no looking back after that. I paint every single day, and I'm just going to keep painting. So that's the idea.
That's beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Do you find that your experience as a data researcher influences or informs your art making practice at all?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that question. I never studied art growing up. The first time I actually learned from somebody was, I think, last year perhaps, and I did a couple of workshops here and there because I was hungry to understand if the way I respond to my canvas is really the way masters responded, is really a technique. Can I call it a technique, right? Is there a formula? Like I said, I was looking for that. So that's how, I'm sorry, I forgot your question.
If your experience as a data researcher informed or contributed to your art making practice.
Yeah. So, like I said, my background is in mathematics, which is all about solving problems. And as artists, I think we are continuously trying to solve problems from our heart, right? There's so much of technique and skill that comes to play as well. So I guess the whole value of experimentation, just like math, you're trying to solve the same problem using different approaches and being fearless about it. Not like this painting, I felt like doing something at the very last minute when everything was there, and that could have made or completely killed this painting. I went with that because I was fearless of trying that. So that, number one. And the second, I think this whole idea of having a workflow, like having a method sometimes, helps me. And it also helps me when I'm trying to teach people, because when I teach people, when I coach people, they need to start with a workflow and then they can deconstruct it to kind of, make it their own voice. So I think all of, the algorithm or the workflow way of thinking and just being more methodical in my approach kind of, comes from that background.
Sure.
So it does help for sure. Yeah.
Let's talk about your process more specifically or explicitly. Do these images come to you in their whole manifestation visually in your mind before you start in on them? Or do you have some preparatory drawings? How do you develop the imagery?
Sure.
And what does that look like in the studio?
Sure. It's a mixed bag, but more or less, there are two parts to my painting. That's how I look at it.
Sure.
The first one is where I treat the canvas as a playground of my imagination. Like I am the child and I'm just going to have fun with no rules, no boundaries, a lot of freedom with whatever I want to do. But I do have my boundaries within which I want to have, exercise my freedom. And the boundaries are perhaps the colors, perhaps the values. So those are the
minimizing variables.
Yeah, exactly, minimizing my variables. So that's how I typically like to start with, and that's where you will see the background coming into play. So the background for any painting is spontaneous. I let the brush take over. I really try hard. I probably listen to music so that I can lose sight of myself. That is just so important, because if it's over planned, it's not going to feel soulful. That's how it feels to me. So I try to just let that canvas take over, and I do all sorts of things with the background. And then when I have like 4 or 5 such canvases with different backgrounds and different abstract play of colors and patterns that just naturally happened on the canvas that moment, probably because of the kind of music I was listening to, or maybe because of the mood I was in, or just the way I spilled the color, once I have those canvases, then I go back to the list of concepts that I want to execute. So I maintain in my notepad, I maintain my ideas and
written,
yes,
verbal.
Yeah, I do that. It could come from a movie that I'm probably watching. It could come from a restaurant that we've just gone to dine in. It could come from daydreaming. It could come from something that my daughter would come back from school and tell me. So it could just come from anywhere. And anything that speaks to me, I just quickly write it down. So now that I have these 5 or 6 canvases, now I look into the concepts that I have noted down that I would like to play around with. And I try to fit in those concepts on those canvases. I feel like I try to marry the concept and the canvas that I have now. That's a prepped up canvas. And that's how I like to start. A lot of times things evolve over a canvas. Like for instance, for this one, I just knew I had to build a relationship with the swan and the angel. And I had this vision constantly, even before I started painting, that I'm going to do it with my hands. So I painted this whole part with my hands, like I just had colors here and I just kept pulling it that way. So that was something that just came to me and I had to execute, right? For example, that painting out there, it's called Glorious Flare. Somebody presented these calla lilies to us, and I wanted to use it in its abstract form. I wanted to create an illusion of those flowers. And when I created that, I realized, oh my God, that I can marry with this glorious flare concept that I've been thinking of, which is all about letting your inner hero arrive. So there's this soft flower, but you're letting that strong self of yours kind of jump out of that, the softer shell that you carry. So it's really a mix. But there is this spontaneous part to my paintings, and there is this really well thought of deliberate part. And believe it or not, there are days when I'm preparing my breakfast and I mentally prepare myself that, okay, today is a day I'm going to take a small brush and sit down and patiently work. Not my favorite part. I always like the big brush day, but I'm constantly working on my mind that what kind of a day, how, and I visualize myself that I'm going to sit down today and carefully work, give myself all the time that's needed.
Sure.
Not be in a hurry. So
in the pre-planning, we'll call it pre-production, is that primarily written verbally? It's words, conceptual words, and then you find imagery that expresses those things?
It could be a combination.
Okay.
There are sometimes when there are words, and then I try to look for references. Sometimes I try referencing my own self. I'll take a picture of my hand or something and fit that in, or I'll make my husband model or my daughter's model. And sometimes it could just be an imagery. There are sometimes I'm just kind of really looking at other artists' work and inspired by that, and in some way I want to incorporate that. So.
What are some of the artists that you find inspiration in, or you admire?
Oh, there are just so many of them. But if I go back in the history, I just love the way I love light. You can see that in my paintings. I'm constantly trying to capture light. So Rembrandt, of course, trying to capture the way he did for lights. I love Sargent's brush strokes. It's magical. It's absolutely magical. So I would love to, get that, even like a hairline, a percent of that. I love Kandinsky's abstraction. You wouldn't really see one artist in my painting, but it's a mix of all these artists that are inspiring me.
Certainly, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and from the recent times, again, I love Richard Schmidt's work. There are just so many. Instagram is a feed of inspiration, right?
Sure.
So I'm looking at different artists. I'm like, oh my God, I love the colors here. Oh my God, I love the brush stroke. I love the concept. And then I'm constantly writing my artist, who are my artist heroes, which is a combination of artists from the back of the, from the past times and what I see today. So yeah, and I think what I would love to do is probably just go to a museum and just recreate some of the works that artists from the past have done. So yeah.
What does a successful studio day look like to you? How do you define a successful studio day?
I feel this painting was a successful studio day for me.
Yeah.
This was a painting where I totally lost sight of my own self.
Okay.
Like when I came out, I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, when did I use that color? When did I do this? When did I do that? And I was blown away with the outcome of the painting. And I knew I didn't do it. I was a vessel. I was the medium. But I let the energy kind of channelize through myself, if it makes sense. I don't know. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I completely lost myself while I was painting this. So to me, that is a successful studio day, where I am not sitting and calculating and thinking, oh, darker value, lighter value. Oh, I've overdone my blue, now it's time for orange. That's not spontaneous in my mind. So yeah.
How often do studio days hit that mark?
Oh, I wish it was like very frequent, but it doesn't happen that often.
Yeah.
It doesn't. And I've realized these are truly the days when I speak less. These are the days when I'm just I'm not there at the studio because I need to be. I am constantly dreaming of the concept that I want to paint. I'm just mesmerized with that abstract idea that I have in my mind, and I want to see how I can have it materialize on my canvas. Like I just become a little kid, little child there, just seeing what's happening and what would it look like eventually. So because of this, there are reasons sometimes I don't create a mock. I don't do a little study. There are times when I don't do a study because I want that inner child to be alive through the painting.
Sure.
And I know I'm taking a risk. There are times when it does not turn out to be that successful, but there are times that I feel, oh, this was right through my soul. And there are paintings where I prep and then I go for it. So
I appreciate your honesty and openness to say those really great studio days are less regular than you'd wish, because I think a lot of folks, particularly people learning to create art, hit that frustration, and it's like, what now? What? But so how do you treat the days that things you're not in the quote unquote flow? Do you have any specific strategies that you use to keep going, or do you walk away from it?
I can be so mad at myself. I think the strategy that helps is bounce back, bounce back, bounce back, like resilience, I guess, right? So there are days when I'm like, oh my God, what is this? This is absolutely full of, right? That there are days that go like that.
Yeah.
But I've also realized those are the days when I'm in a hurry. It's happening because somewhere I'm in a hurry to bring my vision into reality. And I'm not enjoying the process. I'm chasing the result. So it's truly my mindset. It's not the end result on the canvas that particular day. It was the mindset that I approached the canvas with. So the end result might not be good at all. It might be, the ugly stage of the painting. And it's okay for it to be that. It has to be, it has to go through that path. But if in my mind I was in a hurry to see that, the highlight or, that illuminating, that glow vibe, then those are the bad days, right?
Yeah.
So I go back. One thing that I always do when I'm not feeling that good is, again, read through my concepts, or just look at the works of artists, or just read something that's inspirational, or watch something that's inspirational.
Sure.
I take those little breaks here and there, or just read a book or something. It helps me bounce back. Yeah.
What's the most challenging aspect of working as an artist for you?
For me, I guess I think it's, again, going back to the same point of trying to lose sight of myself. I'm constantly working on that. And this whole balancing act of wearing a different hat throughout the process of painting.
Sure.
Because the personality that I carry myself with when I start this painting is very different from the personality that I end this painting with. Right? The first day when I walk to this canvas, I am this hero, I am this lioness, right? I am just like, I don't care, I'm fearless. That's my personality. Then, there is this delicate part where I'm this really soft, deliberate, looking at everything and how it's reacting, and then I'm responding to the canvas based on that, right? So there's a completely different mindset. So just remembering what is that my canvas needs today. When I go to my studio, walking down my studio, just reminding myself of that and tuning into that mindset is what I'm constantly working on. So yes, it's a challenge in many ways, right?
Sure.
I can't just get up, eat my breakfast, and go to the studio mechanically and just start painting. That's not my paintings. Like, if I do still life, I've worked on still lifes, and I realize you have to be in that, your temperament and your mind, you have to have that balanced way of looking at things when you're working on it. So yeah, if that answers your question.
Absolutely. Let's open it up to questions from the folks that are here.
You've gone through a process. These are so vibrant and lively. Each one of them leaps off and just grabs hold of my face as I'm looking at them, which is quite amazing. How do you know when you're done?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You missed one, Jim.
I have a whole list in my pocket that I left for you, Mark.
I'm working on that. I've not mastered that, that skill of knowing when I'm done. But I know when I know I'm done when I know I'm done. What I mean by that is, when I shut all the other voices of the traditional way of doing things, or like I said, a checklist. Did I follow the rule of third, or did I get the golden ratio, or do I have a good balance? Do I have one single point of focus? I'm not going by those rules. I know when I'm done. I know I'm done when I feel good about the painting. And when I start a painting, I ask myself, what is that one message that I want to give through my painting? Right? So I come back the other day. I never decide that very day. So the day I put the paint brush down is not the day I decide it's done. It's a couple of days after that. I come back to it and I ask myself the same question that I started the painting with, that the message that I wanted to deliver through this painting, is the canvas communicating that? If the answer is yes, I put it to rest.
Sure.
And there'll still be areas that I could have, improved, but that's again, marginal utility. So it does not diminishing returns, right? So it does not matter.
to piggyback on that, are there people in your life that you bounce work off of to get a sense of if are you gauging the gap between your intention and the viewer?
My husband and my brother. Absolutely. My mom always likes my work, so I've stopped going to her.
It's great when your mom's like that.
Yeah, I know. In fact, she stopped responding now. So when I send her a picture of my recent painting, she's like, "Oh, it's good." I'm like, "Where is the wow?" And where is, she's like, "No, this is good. This is what is expected." But I think my husband, and he's hard on me. He never sugarcoats it, and so does my brother. Never sugarcoats it. They just call spade a spade, and my husband actually goes to the point of saying, "This is ridiculous. What were you thinking?" But you and I were having a discussion the other day. I've also realized that when I am truly happy with the end outcome, I don't care.
Yeah.
I stick to what I've got. It must be absolute madness to somebody who's looking at it, probably my husband, but I just go with whatever I've got. But there are times when I'm in doubt and I check with them. And even my elder daughter, she's also a great critique. These are the three people: my brother, my husband, and my elder daughter. My younger one is working on it.
But there are times where it clicks for you, and what I'm hearing is it doesn't matter what anyone says at that point because it did what you wanted it to.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there are times in process that you're not so sure, and you'll share it with somebody to get their ideas.
Yeah, I mean, there are days when I got done with a canvas and I still know there is something missing and I'm just not able to find it. So I always ask my husband, "What do you think about it?" Sometimes send a picture to my brother. And more often than not, it just so happens that the pointers that they're making does make a difference, and I try that. So I'm very, very open.
Are either of them artists themselves, or they just have an eye?
They just have an eye, is what I feel. Yeah. They've not studied art. Husband works with Microsoft, brother works with Google. So, but they have an eye. And I think I'm here because of them, because these were the two people who told me I should forget about my corporate job and do what I'm doing today. So I totally give it to them. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you for that question.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. Anybody else?
Well, your pictures are really beautiful. They're beautiful. And I don't have a lot of art practice myself, but I wondered in the process area, in the titles, it says mixed media and oil. Can you speak a little bit to what you mean by mixed media?
Yeah.
What the process is of using besides the oil?
Yeah.
And then a second question is, you mentioned Greek mythology, and this really speaks to this work. Are there other mythologies and cultures, like you were raised in India? Could you tell us a little bit about, is there another influence beyond Greek?
Yeah, absolutely. So to your first question, mixed media is anything under the sun other than oil. So there are crayons, there's ink, there can be spray paint, sometimes even watercolor, markers, acrylic, everything. Gold foils, gold leaves, sorry. Thick pastes, modeling pastes, for texture. Anything that I feel like.
Like this picture, what are
Q-tips. These are Q-tips. I had those Q-tips lying around on my table for subtraction technique. I use Q-tips, right, for subtraction. And while I was painting this, I never planned I would use those rotten Q-tips. Never. I just looked at them and something in me was like, I have to use this. So I put them all there and I do something with it. And I love the result. Had I not loved the result, I would have kind of, gone over it.
Covered the tracks,
But I just let, I like to use these mediums in the very beginning of my canvas because they allow me to be expressive. And I guess in general in my life, I'm not a minimalist. I've realized that. I've tried it. My husband has asked us, he thinks it's good to be a minimalist. I said, I wish I could be, but I'm truly not. I'm somebody who likes abundance. I've realized that. My inner self looks for abundance. So I like to start painting my canvas with a lot of abundance of colors and mediums and expressions, and then I start eliminating the ones that do not tie to the overall story that I'm trying to tell. So I guess it's just the personality that takes over, and hence the mediums. And to your next question, right? I'm sorry if you had a follow-up question on that one.
Well, besides the Q-tips, what other
Oh God.
what other things did you use here? Would you say it's mostly oil?
Yeah, everything that you're seeing now has got a layer of oil on top of it. But when I started, so I bring oil when I start getting the figure in, when I start culling the realism through the abstract, layout that I already have. So oil is the last layer that I use over all of this to make things more pronounced and bring it out, essentially.
So you might even start with a pencil sketch.
Sometimes, I've not done that a lot. I kind of feel like it's a little restrictive and it's a little bit more planned when I'm trying to paint. If I'm just leaving something to a pencil sketch, then pencil is my friend, right? I love it. But sometimes when like this one there was no sketch at all. The way I did this was I had that first layer of all the abstract play of colors. Then I went back over it and I applied a layer of the oils and I subtracted the angel out of it. That was the idea. Because I wanted the angel to slowly pop through the background. Like, she's a part of the background. That was the idea, not superimposed on the background. So the approach on this one was very different versus that one. That one, since you asked, the material that I've used there is, again, working through my breakfast. I open the drawer, I find the kitchen wool, right, the thread that we use. So I've used that thread all over this canvas. If you see all of these patterns.
Oh my.
So that's what I started with. So I took the canvas. My first step was to put a lot of gold leaf in random places, absolutely not planned, whatever felt right to me at that point in time. A lot of gold leaf, and then a couple of different, oranges and reds and all of that. And then I had this thread, I just kind of swirled it however I wanted to and played around with some spray paint. Got that off, and then I started working with my oils and slowly removed the ones that, again, didn't tell a coherent story.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the second question was about the culture, and the Greek mythology, and were there other things that affected you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, everything here is spiritually driven. So the first series that I had worked on was the universal connectedness, and I was trying to go with a sort of a popular imagery of Buddha. So you see on a lot of those really vibrant red and yellow paintings that I have here have some sort of an image of Buddha in that, many of those. And in fact, that's a great question. That's a good segue into what I'm planning to do next. I'm planning to explore Shiva. I don't know if you guys know who Shiva is. Shiva is he is a legend when you talk about Indian mythology. And it truly means, there are these imageries of Shiva. There is this idol that people worship, but to me, he means nothingness, right? He actually means emptiness. So when you really, really go that deep and you explore, and this is not something that I have coined. This is how, when you read into the scriptures, this is what Shiva is. So I'm trying to explore that emptiness. I don't know what it'll turn out as, but that's my next project.
Do these different cultural inspirations ever overlap? As you pointed out, there are Buddhist leanings in one series, and we've got Greco-Roman allusions in another. Is there any intermixing or cross-pollination of those, or do you typically keep them more separate for different series?
Yeah, I think I saw that connection through the spirit animals. So even in the Indian mythology, the spirit animals hold a very important place, right? They are symbols of grace, elegance, nurture. So the elephant that you see, even though that's a part of the third series, which is the spirit of the myth, the elephant holds such a significant symbolism in the Indian culture. So there are absolute overlaps, and that's what I'm realizing, that the deeper I go into any of this, it all converges. Right, and that makes me very happy, because then I feel there is this unity in the story that I'm trying to tell through all my series, all my paintings. So yeah,
It's a through thread.
Yeah.
And the animal, the symbolic animal, holds a place in multiple world cultures, mythologies.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if I can quite clarify exactly my question. It sounds like when you start, you're very spontaneous and kind of big picture global with your backgrounds. And then you look for your concept that you would like to illustrate or to get across. At that point, do you have specific compositional plans for your elements, or is that something that spontaneously arises as well?
I've done both, and I've miserably failed with the second one many a times. I've cursed myself because I'm working on this really big canvas. Everything looks great, the colors are good, the likeness of what I was trying to get is all good, but the composition is haywire. So it's a constant loop of learning, failing, learning again, failing again, getting overconfident, not composing it on a little, demo board. So it's a constant loop, and I like that loop because it keeps me going. The day I feel like I got the formula, I have it all chalked out, I think I'll get bored. So, but now I'm at that phase where I'm going to compose it. With Shiva, I don't want to take chances, perhaps. I don't know actually how it'll turn out, but yes, I'm at that point right now that I want to probably sit down and have a clarity into my compositions. But yes, I think after a point, all these techniques and the fundamentals, you're just wired with that, right? So you're not overthinking, but they're naturally kind of wired into your thought process. So you don't have a checklist, but you definitely, it wouldn't just look right. You know what I mean? Like if you're composing, so I have something sketched out in a small on my in my sketchbook, and it wouldn't look appealing if it doesn't conform to some of the rules. So I guess they're kind of inbuilt in many ways. But I slowly add my heroes into the painting. For example, that little one there, the girl came first, and then I felt something is missing. So I never had the idea of adding the bird at the first instance. I felt like she's listening when I had just the girl, just the angel. I felt like looking at her, I felt like she's listening to something, but I didn't know what she was listening to. So I was asking that question to myself, and somebody told me, it's a bird. It's a bird. It's basically nature that she's listening to. So I added a little hummingbird there, and then I called the painting Divine Whispers. Right? So sometimes the canvas just gives it to you. And composition was not an issue because, I got the girl, now I just need to find another focal point, just add it, whatever makes you feel right. So, great question. Thank you.
I came from a data architecture background, and my job was to ask questions.
Awesome.
I'm retired, you're retired, we won't go into that.
Okay.
I hope everyone brought your sleeping bag.
Oh, you'll fall asleep so quickly you won't need them.
I meant that we were going to be talking all night long.
I see.
Energetically, excitedly, yeah.
Yeah, you obviously have Buddha as elements, both from your culture and the paintings and whatnot. You mentioned Shiva. I recently heard somebody describe Shiva as nothingness. You mentioned nothingness, but that in achieving nothingness, you also have everything. Yeah. And so the question is, how much does meditation practice drive your work?
You said it. I mean,
Thank you.
You said it. I think, like I said, we pour ourselves onto the canvas. So it is really what we feel inside, what comes out on the canvas. And if we have that clear channel of communication, right, within us, with our inner self and the larger force, it's going to be clear on the canvas. So I think I actually told myself that the next couple of years I'm just going to work on Shiva, and to be able to do that, I just need to explore my own self, because there's so much of abundance, and now I'm talking contradictory nothingness, right? How am I going to achieve it? So it's a big task, but I'm really excited, and I feel I can only achieve it by exploring my own self, and that's going to happen through meditation. So I meditate, yes, on and off whenever I get the chance. And sometimes it feels, I'll be honest, it feels like a wastage of time because I get less hours painting. That holds me back, truly. Even physically exercising or running on a treadmill, because I just want to, my kids go to school and I just have this watertight, window for my painting. So anything that comes into the way feels like a wastage of time. So I'm really trying to work on making a plan that is sustainable than something which is short term. So yeah, I'll work on that. So that's a good reminder. Thank you.
I wasn't here to be a nag.
Do you anticipate the nothingness to manifest itself in the work as being more minimalist in a formal sense, or do you have that planned out? And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I do, because
I'm glad you're asking.
It makes for a better video.
Yeah. Okay.
What is your plan?
There is no plan. There is this really abstract vision. I know for a fact I'm going to stay away from an illustrative execution. So when I say nothingness, it has to feel nothingness, even without me going empty and putting a white canvas there. You see what I'm saying? But I don't know. And that is what is charging me, that I don't know, to be honest. I just know that come January, that's what I'm going to think all the time. And that's truly charging me, because that's just an unknown world that I want to explore. And I just know I want to try something different, where I want to use my own style, because I don't think I can stay away from that, because it's me. But at the same time, what I want to communicate is this absolute stillness and calmness. Shiva has a lot of facets. Nothingness is just one of it. I mean, in the end, it all adds up to nothingness, ironically enough. But there are so many different facets, right?
Subtraction through addition.
Oh my God, yes. I'm going to write it in my notepad now.
I trademarked that. You're going to have to pay me.
So I'm going to work on that. And, I prepped my husband. I said, you know what, there's a bigger purpose to our marriage. I know I'm going live on that, but I said, you were supposed to be my Shiva model. So I told him, you need to hit the gym and you need to build your muscles and everything. And that's the conversation we had, I think, a couple of weeks back. And I think last night, he's like, you got it all wrong. He's like, I can't be your model. That's way too bland for a Shiva project. And I said, wait a minute, you are throwing me off now. Like here I'm like, envisioning that I'll make you sit this way, that way I'll take lights and I'll throw it that way on you and get red and green and blue working. And now you're telling me that I've got it all wrong? He's like, yeah, think through it again. And it really opened another window in me. And that's when I realized that I'll probably end up using him as a model, but that's not what I'm going after. First I have to go inside, and then probably that will come. Sure. So if that helps, I don't know. But
you paint on a variety of sizes. I would think that you're trying to get a concept. Do you ever start and go, oh, I need a bigger canvas? I mean, to decide what size the canvas should be, because most of the time we have a picture, we're going to do something, and we decide the canvas before we even start. But because of your spontaneity, I would think it'd be difficult to figure out the canvas size.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I struggle with small canvases. I totally struggle, and I really have to work on my mind and prep myself. Okay, today is a really small brush and a really small canvas. I have to prepare myself mentally. But I realize that everything that I want to tell is a small canvas just is restrictive. I can't go that large and I can't go that big. So I tend to, gravitate more towards bigger canvases, for sure. So yeah.
And when you start, do you put out all the colors, or do you start with maybe a small palette, like with just a few, and then you have to put out more, or do you put them all out so that you have, all those choices?
Yeah.
With the spontaneity that you paint with?
Well, with that spontaneity, with so many colors, also comes overwhelmingness, right? There's just so much to choose from. So like I said in the beginning, that I am a child at play, but I have my boundaries. So I know which playground I need to restrict myself to. So I take out a select few colors that I'm in absolute love with, all my blues and my oranges and quinacridons and all of that. And I stick to that, but I make a lot of colors on the fly. I also love experimenting with colors. So I have my sketchbooks where I have just put colors out and mixed a lot of different colors. So a lot of color mixing. But yes, I stay away from taking the whole palette. I did that for some of my paintings, like especially the first series of Buddha and a little bit of that in my second series. But I'm so much better off when I restrict myself to a certain set of colors. So yeah. So I take out everything that I'm going to use, keep it around me. Even sometimes pictures of paintings that I'm really inspired by from other artists. Or even, I have these little artifacts here and there, some metallic objects or flowers, somebody would have gifted a bouquet or anything, and just go abstract. For example, that one, that girl there, that flower, there is an illusion of a flower right around her neck, right? So that whole thing, I created that with a palette knife, and while I was doing that, I was actually looking at a flower. But at the same time, I didn't want to be meticulous, very intentionally, didn't want it to be a perfect flower. I just wanted it to create an illusion and give a feel of a floral, of nature around. That's about it. So yeah, it's just everywhere.
When I look at your paintings, you've got such bright highlights. Are you glazing? How are you getting that much pop out of the highlights?
I love highlights. I absolutely love highlights. So I don't know, that I think it does not matter what the subject matter of a painting is. It's the play of light and shadow. That's why Rembrandt. And I'm constantly playing complementary, right? So if you come very close, the highlight here is actually a pale yellow, right? And a lot of the shadows are, I have a tinge of purples and violets there. So with my highlights, I'm playing a lot of complementary, and I'm going good, solid with oil on top of it. So I'm not glazing. I'm usually just going with very thick, heavy, and mostly palette knife. I find that tool very expressive. So I just use palette knife and I just brush it like on top of it, maybe a couple of times if need be. But I start very low. It's almost like baking, right? I wait for the best, till the end. So I slowly start with my, so that's why there are a lot of layers. I don't do so much of alla prima. I start with lots of layers and I wait to add my highlights in the end and, go very desaturated, saturated to desaturated and again saturated. That's the idea. So
when you're after you've kind of done the basic, do you ever put it up and then adjust the light in the space where you are to see? I mean, because I'm new to oil and I had a painting. I put it up and I put it under a light and I took a picture and somebody said, "Oh, you really captured the light." The light wasn't in the picture. The light was in the ceiling.
But it suggested opportunity
Yeah.
that
So
you
I
could
was wondering
enhance
if you
it.
use that to guide you in highlighting some of the light.
Yeah, no, that is, you are a true artist because you're living that, right? So I have, in heart she is, for sure. I bet.
You just made the rest of our life.
So two things I do. It's madness. I work in my basement studio. sometimes I would have painted it halfway through. My basement studio is an unfinished basement studio, so I don't have such a good lighting system there. I just have some basic lights. I put some portable lights just where I paint on my easels, but I'm not happy with those. So a lot of times it's still not cured, my oil paints, and I would lift these canvases, come all the way up to my dining space, keep it, look at it from different angles. That's one. Second, I have windows in my basement, so that also helps. There are times when I've had reflections, just light falling in a particular way, and it's guiding you. That's why I guess when you're a seeker, and you're not totally planned all through, and as artists I think we all are, it just comes to you.
Yeah, I thought, well, now I got to try to put that light in there, and I don't know if I can. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
somebody says, oh, the light in that is so good. I said, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, now I got to paint the light.
Right.
Awesome.
Yes, awesome.
No more questions? Sanjukta, thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim. Thank you, and thanks for such amazing questions. I mean, I think I was at ease. So thank you for that.
Awesome. We've been speaking with Sanjukta Mitra about her exhibition, Spirit of Myth, on view in the Redepenning Gallery at the Hopkins Center for the Arts through Saturday, January 6th, 2024. I did just say 2024. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.